You may have heard of them in passing, maybe seen some other players swing them around during a boss fight, unaware of their rarity. I am of course talking about the legendary weapons in World of Warcraft, sought after and grieved over through 10 expansions. In this two-part video, I will go through each of these awesome looking weapons and guide you to obtain them. For the first part, we tackle the legendaries from Classic to the Wrath of the Lich King expansion. The first legendary weapons were introduced in Classic World of Warcraft and are, to this day, some of the most sought after appearances. Sulfuras Hand of Ragnaros and Thunderfury Blessed Blade of the Windseeker. Sulfuras Hand of Ragnaros is a two-handed mace and the favorite weapon of the Fire Lord Ragnaros. As opposed to dropping from the boss himself, this mace is crafted through obtaining two items, the Sulfuran Hammer and the Eye of Sulfuras. The very first step to obtain the weapon is getting the Eye of Sulfuras. This item has a drop rate of around 4% from Ragnaros himself in Molten Core. Since the item is bind on pickup, you want to bring a character which can use two-handed maces to later unlock the weapon appearance. If the eye does not immediately drop, it is actually a good thing, because while you're running Molten Core, you will collect resources from mobs and bosses on the way, and you want to hold on to those. You need them to craft the Sulfuran Hammer later. Overall, once you get the Eye of Sulfuras, you must craft the Sulfuran Hammer. And to do so, you need the following items. 8 Sulfuran Ingots, which can drop from Golmag the Incinerator at around 38% chance. Note, farm or purchase an extra ingot if you do not have a blacksmith around who has learned the recipe for the Sulfuran Hammer. I will return to this point later. 50 Arcanite bars, which are crafted by alchemists using thorium bars and arcane crystals. 20 dark iron bars, which are made by miners by smelting dark iron ore. If you're a miner, I recommend mining along the nodes in Molten Core during your Eye of Sulfuras farm. The bars can only be crafted at the Black Forge, which I will get to in a bit. 10 Blood of the Mountain, which have an 8% chance to drop from Molten Destroyers in Molten Core, and 25 Essence of Fire, 10 Lava Cores and 10 Fury Cores, all of which can drop from several mobs in Molten Core. All of these items can of course also easily be purchased from the auction house, but might as well save some gold where you can, right? So you've got the Eye of Sulfuras, and you move on to the step of crafting your Sulfuran Hammer. If you are crafting the dark iron bars yourself, you need the Black Forge, which is located inside the Blackrock Depths, which is also where you find the blacksmithing pattern for the Sulfuran Hammer if you do not have it. However, you need a skill level of 300 classic blacksmithing to make the hammer. So before smelting your dark iron into bars and before heading into the Blackrock Depths to purchase the pattern, I recommend you raise your blacksmithing level to 300 for efficiency's sake. Alright? Okay, once you're skillful enough, you go find the NPC Lokto's Dark Bargainer, who's located in the Blackrock Depths at the coordinates 50.6, 59.2. Once you give him 1 Sulfuran Ingot, he will let you purchase the blacksmithing pattern for the Sulfuran Hammer from him, which is why you wanted to get that extra Sulfuran Ingot. With the pattern learned and the materials on hand, of course dark iron ore instead of bars if you're making those yourself, head to the Black Forge, which you find at the original entrance to Molten Core inside the Blackrock Depths. This forge is the only place where you can smelt dark iron and make the Sulfuran Hammer. The forge can be a bit tricky to find. Basically, you find it right after Summoner's Tomb, before the bridge which leads into the Molten Core raid. Once you have crafted the Sulfuran Hammer, you only need to combine it with the Eye of Sulfuras, still at the Black Forge, and you will have obtained your legendary weapon, Sulfuras Hand of Ragnaros. Congratulations. Thunderfury Blessed Blade of the Windseeker is a one-handed sword also obtained in the Molten Core raid. The process of which to unlock the weapon and its appearance is very similar to that of Sulfuras. Obtain 2 rare drops from the raid and then combine them using a bunch of materials also obtained in the raid. This means you can actually work towards 2 legendary weapons at the same time if you want. Alright, so to get Thunderfury you must obtain the 2 bindings of the Windseeker. The right part, which drops from Gar at around 4% chance, and the left part, which drops from Baron Geddon, also at around 4% chance. To farm these bindings, which are bind and pickup, make sure to bring a character that can use one-handed swords. You don't technically need both bindings to progress to step 2 here, but you do need both bindings in the end. So it's up to you in which order you go about obtaining the legendary. But once you obtain one of the bindings, you will be able to pick up the quest Thunderfury the Windseeker from High Lord Demetrian in Silithus, and he will send you out to collect materials to be able to unite the 2 bindings. Demetrian is found at the coordinates 29.6, 10.6 in Old Silithus. Speak to Siridomi in Silithus if you find yourself in the post-Legion phase. The quest will require you to go back into Molten Core to collect an essence of the Fire Lord, which is a guaranteed drop from Ragnaros in Molten Core when you have the quest on hand, which is why you might as well start the quest after obtaining the first binding. Aside from the essence of the Fire Lord, you need 10 enchanted Elementium bars to unite the 2 halves of Thunderfury. The easiest and most expensive way to get these enchanted bars is through the auction house, but you can also craft them yourself. To do so, you need to have obtained the Goblin's Guide to Elementium. Obtaining this book requires 300 skill in classic mining and killing Master Elemental Shaper Crixix in the Blackwing lair. This guide will teach you to smelt enchanted Elementium, so you don't actually need an enchanter to help you here. As a miner, to enchant the Elementium bars you need 10 Fairy Cores, which drop from Fire Elemental mobs in Molten Core, 30 Elemental Flux, purchased from blacksmithing vendors in capital cities, 10 Elementium Ingots, which can drop from Blackwing technicians in the Blackwing lair, and 100 Arcanite bars, which are crafted by alchemists using thorium bars and arcane crystals. All of these mats can of course be purchased from the auction house if you do not feel like farming for them. Once you have your essence of the Fire Lord, 10 enchanted Elementium bars, and both the left and the right binding of the Windseeker in your bags, return to High Lord Demetrian, who will reward you with the legendary weapon upon turning in the quest. You are now the owner of Thunderfury Blessed Blade of the Windseeker. The Burning Crusade expansion brought with it the infamous Warglaives of Azzinoth and perhaps the lesser known Thori'dal The Stars Fury. The Warglaives of Azzinoth may be the most noticeable legendary around Azeroth. The twin blades drop from Illidan's Storm Rage in the Black Temple raid, the right and left ones separately, to warriors, rogues, death knights, monks and demon hunters, each at an around 5% drop rate. Simple, right? No. Unlocking the ability to transmog this item is not quite that simple. After obtaining each of the weapons, you must complete the Black Temple Time Walking raid on any character above level 61. Doing so will give you the achievement "I'll hold these for you until you get out." The achievement is account-wide, but only demon hunters can actually apply the transmog of the Warglaives of Azzinoth. Better make that demon hunter character now, huh? Thori'dal The Stars Fury is a legendary bow crafted by and belonging to the High Elves of Kil'Danas. However, during the invasion, the bow was stolen by Kil'jaeden, from whom we must get it back. Obtaining the transmog for this particular legendary is perhaps the easiest, depending on your luck, of course. The bow has around 6% chance to drop from Kil'jaeden in the Sunwell Plateau raid. The easiest way to get to Sunwell Plateau is to use the portal to Shattrath and take the portal from there. While the bow can only be transmogged to a hunter's weapon, you can actually obtain and equip the bow on hunters, rogues and warriors. Which doesn't make much sense, but alright. Once the bow drops for one of the above mentioned classes, the transmog is yours. In the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, Blizzard once again introduced 2 legendaries that were not easy to obtain and did require quite a bit of legwork. The legwork, which we cannot skip even today, is fortunately tied up to quests, so we do not have to guess ourselves which items we need when. The 2 legendaries which require time, dedication and patience are Val'anyr, Hammer of Ancient Kings, and Shadowmourne. Val'anyr, Hammer of Ancient Kings, is the less time-consuming of the 2. This legendary mace, forged by the Titans and intended for healers back in Wrath, requires you to collect 30 fragments of Val'anyr from the bosses in the Ulduar raid. The drop rate is quite low, but varies amongst the bosses, with the highest drop rate being around 70%, according to Wowhead, from Yogg-Saron. If you do the raid in hard mode, there's a chance of 2 shards per boss. You can technically pick up these fragments on all classes, but they can only be assembled into the weapon by paladins, priests, shamans, monks and druids, and they are bind on pickup. So, bring your healer classes to the raid. Now, a tip here. If you obtain all 30 fragments in a run before beating Yogg-Saron, do not kill him. This will help save some time later, trust me. Once you have collected 30 fragments, which may require a couple of raid runs, simply right-click them to assemble. Once you do, you will obtain the item Shattered Fragments of Val'anyr and the quest Ancient History. The quest requires you to return to the Archivum console to then pick up another quest, Val'anyr, Hammer of Ancient Kings. And now the reason why we did not want to kill good old Yogg-Saron. This second quest requires you to go to him, engage, do not kill, and use the item Unbound Fragments of Val'anyr when the boss casts his spell Deafen and Roar. Once you do this, the legendary weapon will be yours, and you can take down the Old God. Shadowmourne is set to be the nemesis of the famous Frostmourne blade, and the most powerful weapon a Death Knight can obtain. At least it was back in Wrath. Obtaining this legendary requires quite a bit of questing and care, especially if you're running the quests on a max level geared character, since you must keep things alive during these quests. Overall, you must complete 9 quests in the 25-man version of Icecrown Citadel, you must be a Death Knight, Warrior or Paladin, and you must be friendly with the Ashen Verdict faction. The various quests will require several runs of the raid, so obtaining the weapon will take a few weeks. To begin your journey to obtain the weapon, you must pick up the first quest, the Sacred and the Corrupt, from High Lord Darian Morgraine inside the Icecrown Citadel raid. He will have this quest available to you once you reach friendly reputation with the Ashen Verdict, and if you're a warrior, Death Knight or Paladin. Reaching friendly is rather easy, as you can grind rep by killing mobs and bosses inside Icecrown Citadel. Now, before we start, it is important that you make sure you are in the 25-man version of the Icecrown Citadel. The 10-man version will not work on most of the quests. Each quest will tell you which version of the raid works. The Sacred and the Corrupt asks you to obtain 4 items. 20 Primordial Serenite, which can be looted from all bosses in Icecrown Citadel, with a 20% drop chance on average. Or they can be purchased from the auction house, which is the faster option. Festergut's Acidic Blood, which is looted from Festergut. Rotface Acidic Blood, which drops from Rotface. and Light's Vengeance, which is obtained outside of the raid in a cave in Dragonflight. The coordinates are 7423. Make your way through the cave, cleaving down the ghouls on your way. At the end of the cave, you find the Light's Vengeance, which you can grab after killing an elite mob which spawns and tries to stop you. With all the items in your bags, you must head back into the raid to the Rune Forge next to Darien. Use the forge to assemble the items. Darien Morgraine gives you the next quest, Shadow's Edge, after you drop all the above mentioned items into the forge. To complete Shadow's Edge, simply be patient as Darien tells you a story. Upon finishing his tale, Darien gives you Shadow's Edge, an axe which you must equip and keep equipped for the remainder of the questline. If you lose Shadow's Edge to, say, Autovender, like I did, you can talk to Darien to get it reforged. To turn Shadow's Edge into Shadowmourne, she needs to be fed souls and 3 infusions: Unholy, Frost, and Blood. A Feast of Souls tasks you with feeding the axe the necessary souls. With Shadow's Edge equipped, simply take out 50 mobs inside Icecrown Citadel to absorb 50 souls. This particular quest can actually be done in both the 25 and 10-man version of the raid. Note that in current retail, the quest will bug the count of souls if you kill the mobs too quickly, so be careful. I used Death and Decay on my DK to take down the mobs in a slower manner. Now, after turning in Feast of Souls, things get a little more annoying for us. We must complete the 3 quests: Unholy Infusion, Blood Infusion, and Frost Infusion. Unholy Infusion can easily be soloed if you take things slow. The quest asks you to infuse Shadow's Edge with unholy power and afterwards slay the boss Professor Putricide. To do so, follow these steps. Engage Professor Putricide in the raid, but do not damage him. In the fight, Putricide will summon some green oils, which you kill to leave green puddles on the floor. He will also summon green puddles by themselves. Make sure you leave a good amount of puddles on the floor. 3 or 4 should be plenty. Now, next step requires you to get Putricide down to 80% HP, and then run to his workbench and get there before him. If you have a speed buff, save it. So give him a few slaps to 80%, and once you do, get to the work table to interact with and drink one of the potions there. Upon drinking a potion, you will be transformed into an abomination. Still leaving Putricide alone, run around the room and absorb the green puddles on the floor using spell 1 until you get 100 energy. Be careful not to die. Once you do, target a slime in the room and use the spell Shadow Infusion, which is the 4th spell, which gives you the Shadow Infusion buff. And now all that is left to do is to take down the boss. Blood Infusion is a little trickier. It requires you to be affected by Queen Lanathel's spell Blood Mirror, which will affect your Shadow's Edge weapon. And then you must bite 3 other characters before taking down the boss. It is by far the easiest to get help from 3 friends who can join you in the raid. But there is a trick to do it solo by switching between ults. I have linked Wowhead's step-by-step guide to this method in the description below. Once you bite 3 characters, your Shadow's Edge will be sated and you can take down the boss. Frost Infusion sends you into battle with the Frost Queen Sindragosa. Engage the dragon in a fight, but be careful you do not damage her too much. Pace in front of her to get hit by her Frost Breath spell 4 times to infuse your blade with frost. After doing so, you can take out Sindragosa. The next quest from Darien is the Splintered Throne, which requires you to collect 50 Shadow Frost shards, which can drop from all bosses in Icecrown Citadel on the 25-man difficulty. With the 50 shards on hand, go back to Darien, who will give you the final quest, Shadowmourne. Simply speak to him and you will receive the legendary weapon Shadowmourne. Congratulations! There is a final quest in the quest line, which completes your journey and gives you 3 toys, a tabard and a mount. The Lich King's Last Stand simply asks you to take down the Lich King in the raid, upon which you will loot a sealed chest from him. This will trigger the quest Personal Property. Inside the sealed chest is 5 personal items belonging to Sylvanas, Jaina, Muradin, Uther and Darian Morgraine himself. Bring these items back to the NPCs and you will receive a unique reward from each of them. Sylvanas' music box from Sylvanas, Jaina's locket from Jaina, Muradin's favor from Muradin, tabard of the Lightbringer from Uther, and reins of the Crimson Death Charger from Darian Morgraine. And that's it. This marks the end of part 1 of the Legendary Weapon Appearance Guide. I aim to have part 2, which covers the expansions Cataclysm to Dragonflight, done and up as soon as possible. If I missed anything in this guide, a tip or a small change, feel free to let me know. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like or subscribe to the channel if you want, and let me know anytime if there's a particular mount, pet, transmog or anything else you wish me to make a guide on. Till then, take care of yourselves and each other. Bye.